All right, man, I'm pumped to have Michael from Church Fuel on here with Social Church. Michael, how are you doing today?
I'm great, man. How are you?
Doing wonderful. Now tell us where you're at right now in the world. I think you're over in Atlanta or out that way, right?
I am. You know what? I'm in my home office in Atlanta, and so we live down here in the South, and we enjoy the humidity in the summer and an ice storm in the winter that we don't know what to do with. So it's awesome.
And real quick, just to get it out on the table, any college football teams you root for, pro teams? We're about to really crank into that season here.
Yeah, man. So in the South, college football town, right? But I'm actually a graduate of the school I root for, unlike most college football fans. So I graduated from Florida State, so I can do the chop.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I grew up in Oklahoma. Didn't go to Oklahoma University, but still a fan. So
of course, right? Yeah. So go Sooners, right?
There you go.
I can root for the Sooners.
All right. Well, we're looking good so far. So we'll see. We'll see how this plays out. I think we got a couple big games coming up here. Well, let's jump into this because I'm in process of watching your series with Church Fuel. You've got a great series going on. Why don't you give us a little bit of a sneak peek of what that is, and then I want to jump in and ask you some questions because you're talking about church leadership, church growth, great stuff. But I want to see for our audience if we can tie that into the social media side. And
totally.
Then if they want to jump in to get the full series, maybe give us a little bit of background, what you've got going on, and then how they can see the full series if they want to do this after the interview.
Yeah, totally. So we've got we just released a video series, and it's 4 videos totally. And what we're doing is we're just kind of walking through kind of a process by which churches can use and kind of follow to just experience just church growth. And what church growth means, it's more people, it's more money, it's more volunteers, it's more people in groups, it's more kingdom, it's more everything, right? We want the whole thing to grow in a healthy way. And so what we did is we profiled some churches that were growing, and we said, what are they doing? Like, what does it actually look like? What are some common denominators? What are some of those keys to growth? And what are some of the principles that we can put in place? Because we don't want to look at a growing church and just copy it, right? And even with social media, we don't want to just like, hey, this church is tweeting this stuff out, let's do the same thing, or here's a great picture, let's get the same angle. But what principles can we learn and apply all that stuff back to our church? So that's the kind of heart behind the video series, 4 videos and all. And they're all, I think, pretty practical and pretty helpful.
Yeah, it's great stuff. So if people want to check out the full series, how do they do that?
Yeah, so if you just go to churchfuel.com/free video series,
okay.
And you just type in your email address, and we'll send you all 4 of them, and you can kind of watch them. You can download them. We try to make all our stuff downloadable. If you want to grab it on a computer and take it into a staff meeting, you can do that.
Cool.
But churchfuel.com/free video series.
Very cool. Well, I want to jump in because I've got 4 questions. I'm halfway through the video series myself. So tying these over to social, I want to start with what you just talked about. When we look across, because most of us in the church world, are a little bit smaller churches, and then there's this tendency to want to look to what the mega church is doing and copy that, especially on social media because it's so easily accessible. Like, oh, what are they doing? Oh, I can do that too. So how do we learn? Because in the series you talk about learn principles, not just copying. So how do we apply that over on social media?
Yeah, and you raise a great point because we don't have the budgets of the megachurch, and we don't have the people and the staff of the megachurch, and so if we try to copy their tactics, we end up getting frustrated because we don't have the infrastructure to support those tactics. But the principles will probably transfer over. So a great example for social media would just be, and I think anybody that is doing social out their church, this would be a smart thing to do, is follow some churches, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, create a, whatever tool you use to kind of follow, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, whatever. Follow, create a segment of churches, but don't just look for what they do. Mm-hmm. Look at why they're doing it. A lot of times we see a Instagram picture and we're like, oh, that's a great picture, we should post something like that. But look at the comments, look at the engagement. Yeah. Sometimes what looks cool doesn't engage people, and what engages people is just something real simple. So what are the principles that churches are doing that are creating conversations, and can you do that in your town, in your setting? Yeah. And I think anytime we can look at a church and what they're doing on social and see here's the reason behind it, here's the principles behind it, and then how do we do that in our church? Not they posted this, we should post it. It's a level deeper.
Yeah, I love that. Another key principle that you're talking about in this series is you're talking about churches really finding what you call the kingdom concept, which is maybe like what they're really good at, what God's really equipped them to do. And then you say, hey, go all in. And those are my words. I think you word it better than I do, but kind of go all in on that. Should we be doing the same thing when it comes to social media? Meaning, should that reflect not only in our budget at the church, but also in our time and energy and attention on social media as well?
Yeah, I think so. And that idea of the kingdom concept, I get that from a book. A friend of mine named Will Mancini wrote a book called Church Unique, which is a great book for really anybody in church leadership to read. But his idea of the kingdom concept is really like your ministry sweet spot, right? And so he drew, if we were drawing on a board, we could draw these circles, right? So it's 3 circles. And circle number 1 is what is going on in your community, right? Like what's the needs of your community? Are you in a family community with young families? Are you in where inner city? Are you out in the country? Whatever. What's going on in your community? And interestingly, I think that's a great place to tie in social. So a lot of times when we're tweeting things or we're Instagramming things out about our church, it's about our church, but can we make it about our community?
Love that.
Can we highlight what's happening in the community? And that community focus is a great place to bring social in. And so this idea of the sweet spot is what's happening in your community. What does your church have, right? So that's the second circle. And again, we can highlight this on social. Like our church has a building. It's right here. Our church has a big ministry to this school. We have the mayor goes to our church. I mean, these are all assets, right, that our church would have. So you've got the needs of the community mixed with the assets of a church, and not, financial assets, but just what the church has. And then that third piece, I think of it as like the calling. Like, what are the leaders and the people just called to do, right? Sometimes you have a church where the pastor is called to do a certain thing, but there's tension, right? Because the rest of the church doesn't share that calling. And so it's not just the tension of the pastor, it's the calling of the church. Will Mancini calls that the apostolic spirit, but he's very smart, and I don't know what that means. I use calling, right? And so where those 3 things meet, that's the sweet spot of your church. Now, if you can identify that, it's really hard. You can now go, okay, if this is a sweet spot of our church, are our posts talking about that? Are our posts highlighting that? Are we highlighting the needs of the community, how our church is meeting it, and why it really matters?
Wow.
Right? And so that makes social for if we can work through this framework, it makes social an extension of kind of our calling rather than just a task and a thing that we do.
Yeah, I love that, because I think a lot of us, we're beating our heads against the wall thinking, okay, what do I have to post? What do I need to do? I just need to get something out there and going.
Yeah, totally.
As opposed
I haven't put a picture up in 2 days. What are we going to do? Well, so and instead of just going, hey, we need a resource of what to post today. I mean, that's pretty shallow, right? But go back to what's happening in your community. What does your church have, and what is your calling? And that's where your posts are going to come from.
I love that, which ties in the next question. Again, you talk about this in the series, that growing churches actually aren't good at everything. In fact, if they're good at something, sometimes they're good at stopping things or not doing things,
right,
which is a weird to kind of throw out there. But should we carry that concept over into social as well? Kind of the same principle, but it's the flip side of the coin.
Yeah, and I've actually...
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I've heard you talk about this before, is that you don't have to engage on every channel.
Yeah.
You don't have to do everything, right? And so that principle of a church not being good at everything, it's stressful, right? It's frustrating because we as leaders, we look at our church and we're like, we got to get better at this. And one of the things we say in the free video series is that the key to growth in your church, it might not be something you start, but it could be something you stop.
Yeah.
And so we kind of walk through this thing of going, do we need to stop doing this? Do we need to change this? Is this something that used to work? And so I've watched some of you guys' stuff that you send out. You send out great stuff, but I've not seen any training on how to revive the MySpace page. Why? Because that used to work and it's no longer working. And so change. And so as we look at our church, particularly on social, you don't have to engage everywhere. Pick a place. Once a place is going great, then you can add a second one. But don't feel the pressure just to add. you may actually want to eliminate, and just do one or two things really well. Have you seen that? Is that something you guys have experienced as well?
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you jumped right to the idea of the platforms, because sometimes there does feel like there's a pressure that I've got to be on every single platform, as opposed to starting back with your kingdom, kind of that core center part, and saying, okay, what platform is going to help us reach that, do that, interact with our community? Let's start there, and then when we can, add other elements. So I think that's huge, because it helps get rid of the pressure, what to post, where to post it, how to post it. All that can be now with purpose and mission, as opposed to just kind of randomly. And
it becomes, you nailed it right there. Instead of random, it's purpose. And right, so this whole idea of what gets shared and what we talk about emanates from our mission and our vision and kind of who we are, rather than just like, hey, this would be something cool to talk about, or here's an announcement we need to share. It's I know it's overused, but it's that purpose-driven, like it's an outflow of what we're doing.
Yeah, which it ties into my last question. And again, go watch the video series, because this really will explain more. And I love what you did in terms of the Mr. Potato Head analogy. I love that. And again, watch the series. He illustrates that. I got another kind of mentor in this space that kind of uses the Frankenstein analogy, which I've heard is similar. Like, you just throw all these different ideas together. You're doing all this activity, and nothing really ends up working. But you end up creating this monster that has to be, fed. So on social media, how do we not get that monster mentality? That where everything is, we're just throwing stuff. How do we get it where it's making sense, it's coherent, and it's actually advancing the mission? It's actually moving the ball down the field and not just being activity.
Yeah, and again, that's a great question, and I think tools like the tools even you're providing really help with that, because it causes us to just, hey, let's think. I tell my teenager this, right? Think before you post something, right? Just because something's happening doesn't mean you need to take a picture of it and post it. And I have to preach this to myself too, that I sometimes pray this prayer, and it's a silly prayer, but I say, dear Lord, please, free me from the need to comment on everything. Like, I don't have to comment on every issue that's going on in the world. And your church on social doesn't need a position, doesn't need to comment on everything. I mean, it's just, there's so much stuff that you could talk about, or could take pictures of, or could share. What's helpful? And I think it always helps to come back to, like, okay, let's pick up our phone and put ourselves in the position of a follower, right? Is this a person in the church? Is this a person in the community? I mean, who is this? And what's helpful to them? I mean, what are they going to read? What are they actually going to favorite or forward or share? And if it doesn't pass that test, it's like, just don't share it, Yeah. And so, do we need to make announcements? Of course, yes. But maybe a percentage of what we share. Do we need to share Bible verses? Of course. But if your social feed is nothing but a daily Bible verse, there's 9 million places that they can get that. So think of the reader, think of the user, think of the person scrolling on their phone. What's helpful to them, and post those kind of things. And it gets back to the kind of the mission of the church.
Yeah, and I know we started this video kind of kicking around college football, but I think as you're talking, as we should. So let's end it here as well. So I'm sure if we followed the Oklahoma Sooners or the Florida State teams on social media, they're not just posting generic posts about the rules of football, right? You're going to get player profiles, you're going to get insights to practice, you're going to get fun stories, you're going to get all this stuff that's specific, it's contextualized to not just college football, but college football at Florida State, and why it's unique, what the experience with the culture is, what the stadium, what game day is, pump up videos. So I think the church world, like what you were just saying, if it is literally just like, nothing wrong with Bible verses, because you and I are very Bible.
Sure, we need those.
Right, but your feed shouldn't just be generic church. It needs to be what uniquely God is developing at your church, right? Yeah. And so anything closing on that? Again, I want to push people to watch the full video series because it's so good, but anything you would just kind of wrap up in terms of how a church can be what God has uniquely called them to be?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to personality, right? I mean, people, the football teams that you mentioned, the things that get shared and the pictures that get liked more often are are the ones that have some intrigue and some interest and some personality, or we're making fun of the other team, or it's like, I just saw, we mentioned Florida State, they just lost to Alabama, and I saw somebody shared a picture on social of, the elephant riding the horse, with the spear up in there. And I was so mad, and I was like, "You're such an obnoxious fan." But that's what got the emotional response out of me, right?
Right.
And what is that? It's personality. And so our feeds, in church, they don't need to be void of personality. They should have fun. They should have life. They should have intrigue. And we can share spiritual stuff and important stuff in as well. But, put some fun people, create a social media team and have some fun people. Put some personality there. It doesn't have to all be announcements, from the bulletin. We can do better than that, I think.
I love it. Well, man,
don't make fun of the other church and put their pastor like on a horse or something, but
do it, then tag us.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
I'm just kidding. Tag somebody else.
Ryan said to do this.
That's awesome, man. Well, I'll put a link where people can jump over to the full video series. Tell us, just as wrapping up, anything that we need to know about Church Fuel, what you guys do. I know it's so important. There's so many, good things that you have to pour into the local church. So give us a little bit of idea what you got going on there.
Yeah, the core. Thanks for asking that. The core of what we have is kind of a membership community for it tends to be typically pastors, campus pastors, who grab a resource and then end up sharing it with their team and talking with their team about it. And so we do master classes, we do case studies, we got a resource library full of just stuff. But it's a place. It's pretty similar to what you guys do. And I think the synergy that we have is there's so many resources out there for people that want to grow. And just by nature of somebody watching a video like this is somebody saying, "Hey, we want to learn, we want to keep growing." And I would just applaud that spirit, that mindset of going, we want to get better. That is a stewardship mindset, right? Stewardship's not about money, just about money. It's about influence and leadership and all that stuff. And I want to be the best leader I can be. And so I think the video series will give you some ideas to talk about as well. And so I'd love for you to check it out. And love your comments, love your feedback on it. If you have questions or we can serve you, that's what we do every day. So
very cool. Well, check it out, guys. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to have you on for another future tip. Maybe Florida State OU will meet in a bowl game. Yeah,
there you go. It'll probably be like a terrible bowl at the end of the year. We've all lost like 4 games. It'll be like an early December.
Oh, man. I just hate being beat by Alabama.
It's terrible, isn't it?
I know, man. Maybe we should start a podcast, college football in the local church.
It's Monday or it's like Sunday morning on the way to church where we're just lamenting the day before. Great podcast.
I love it. All right, man. Well, God bless.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.